educate, and everybody should be speaking as one. This is federal issues. Everybody goes, oh, we don't have that problem or whatever. Whatever affects you affects me in New Jersey, okay? My name is George Kasimos. I'm from Toms River, New Jersey. I'm a realtor and a broker. I promise I will not sell any property to you in South Carolina. I started this group because I wanted information. 7 years ago, my home flooded, and I had flood insurance, and I was one of the first people to rebuild it and to put an addition on my home. I got permits from the town. I'm almost done, about 4 or 5 months after the storm, and the town says, we made a mistake, George. You have to elevate your home after I'm done building my home. If I knew that in the beginning, I would have knocked it down and built an elevated home. But now I have to take the house apart again in the whole 9 yards. It's like building 2 homes. I was actually out of my home more to elevate my home than actually rebuilding my home. It's kind of crazy. Within a few weeks after that, though, FEMA came back and redid our flood maps. My home was in an A6. I live on the water in Toms River. We fish off our backyard in the lagoon community. My home was a little bit above A6. FEMA's base flood elevation was A6. They put me into a velocity zone. That's the highest zone. It's called the dreaded V zone. And I was 4 feet. They went to A10. My flood insurance was going from $1,000 to $30,000 a year. So I started the group so I can understand. It was a selfish endeavor so I can understand. Tell me what to do and I'll do it, but you can't change the rules on me every time. And you can't, and this went tens of thousands of people across New York and New Jersey after Superstorm Sandy were in the same boat. And I started this group again so I could find somebody smarter who can explain. I wrote letters to my congressmen and my senators, and I couldn't get an answer. So that's when we started the group. So we're going to talk a little about flood insurance. I'm going to give you like a 10-minute, 15-minute real quick dissertation. And I like talking to everybody to kind of say, all right, here's where we are, here's my issue, and let's discuss it. How will flood insurance affect the value of your home anywhere, not just on St. James Island, anywhere across the country? This is happening, 22,000 flood zone communities. The National Flood Insurance was brought into existence in 1968. There used to be just private insurance, and there was a couple big storms. All these insurance companies went under, or they got hurt financially and said, we're no longer going to do that. The federal government came in and said, hey, we have to insure our federally backed mortgages. So that happened in 1968. To encourage people to come into the program, they subsidized flood insurance. There's 5.1 million of us. Think about it, 3 people in a home. It's 15 million people today living in the flood zone. We're $25 billion in debt. There's 22 flood zone communities. And in 2012, there was a bill called the Bigger Waters Act. They started to phase out the flood insurance subsidies. Now, have some of you seen 10, 20, 30, 100% increases in your flood insurance in the last few years? Okay, so it's because of that. Now, I'm just going to go back to where it says 2019. The current legislation is for 18 to 25% compounded yearly increases. Your subsidies are being phased out. Some of you have $10,000 or $20,000 actuarial rates. We're going to discuss who has those. But you're going to receive increases up to 25% compounded annually until you reach your actuarial rate. We encourage everybody to call your congressmen and your senators. There's another bill that's trying to cap it at 9%, proposed 2019. It's called the NFIP Reauthorization and Reform Act. Call your congressmen, call your senators and say, hey, I want the 9%. Let's slow the increases down, and kind of go from there. So even 9% is kind of high. And then lastly, above and beyond the 18 to 25% compounded yearly increases, in October 2020, in 1 year, FEMA is going to fundamentally change the way they rate risk. And we don't know anything about it. So they have not publicly come out on how it's going to affect it, who it's going to affect, and everything else. We know a couple things. The closer you are to water, the higher your risk, the higher your premium is going to be. If you live in a place where you have to, your cost of construction is higher, here as opposed to Kansas, your premium is going to be higher. So those things we know, but we don't know actuarial rates and how it's going to affect you. So if you have a primary home, you're going to get up to 18% compounded yearly increases. If you have an investment property, a second home, if you're substantially damaged, if you're repetitive loss property, you're going to get up to a 25% compounded yearly increase until you reach your actuarial rate. Does anybody know what the elevation of their home is? And does anybody know what what FEMA's elevation is in their home? And what kind of talk? Yeah, yes.
Yeah. I live in an AE 14 zone.
Yep.
And the elevation of my finished floor is 21 feet.
So so think about it here for a second. How do we judge risk? This should be a simple question, right? If my health is bad, I can tell because I have high blood pressure, I have high sugar. We can kind of, right? I'm kind of a little bit overweight. My health probably isn't that bad. How do I know this house is high risk or low risk? Well, it's very simple. FEMA requires you to be at 14 feet. His house is at 21 feet, 7 feet above the BFE. He's the healthiest home ever. He is such lower. If he gets flooded, we all got bigger problems than flooding anymore, okay? So now when somebody, if your BFE is 14, does anybody else know what their BFE is? Go ahead.
The elevation is 9 and the BFE is 12.
So FEMA wants you to be at 12. She's 3 feet below the BFE. So let me kind of go back here and kind of explain a little bit. So as we say, your subsidies are being phased out. So right now, a lot of people aren't paying a lot of money. So if your home is at the BFE, if you're equal FEMA's, your actuary rate is going to be $819. If you go down 1 foot below the base flood elevation, she's 3 feet below. Your actuarial rate is $5,600. How much was your premium when you bought your home?
$600.
And when did you buy it?
2005.
So from 2005 till now, what's your premium?
$6,900.
So from 600 it went to 6,900. And I'll tell you right now, if 5,600 is 1 foot below. If you're 10 foot below, it's going to be $25,000. So she's going to, her actuary rate is probably going to go up a little bit more. Kind of see so she's between 5,600 and 25,000. Does anybody live in a V zone? You live in what's called a dreaded V zone. So there's another rate, there's another chart like this that's significantly worse, except for the numbers go to 30, 40, and $50,000 a year. They put me in a V zone. I was in an A zone, they put me in the V zone. 4 feet below the base flood elevation, 4 feet is $30,000, not 10 feet as is here. So if you're 4 feet below the base flood elevation, it's 30, your actuarial rate is $30,000 a year. And if you want, I can email you that, and I think I owe you that, right? I can email you a similar chart like this from FEMA. By the way, this is a FEMA document. This is not something I made at my home. Any questions on that? So the way you figure that out is you get your elevation certificate, and your elevation certificate will tell you what your home is at and what FEMA's base flood elevation is at. Make sure you have a newer base flood elevation. Rich, has your elevation gone up?
My addition went up from the main house.
When was the original house built?
1978.
So 1978, what was your base flood elevation?
12.
And then when did you do your addition?
About 5-6 years ago.
So in 20 years, his base flood elevation went up how many feet?
14
so,
plus 1 for the...
So now, to build a new house in his development, you have to go +3. So let me tell you my story. I saw the maps, 1 second. Let me tell you my story. So I was a little bit above FEMA's base flood elevation. They came, I was in an A6, they put me in a V10. So now I'm a drunken driver, if you think about driving, right? My home is it's the highest risk almost you can get. And so I was forced to elevate, I was substantially damaged. So I didn't build, I could have built we fought the maps, and then they put it to an 8 + 1. So I went from 6 and change, I could have went to 9. I ended up going to 15.5. I'm actually higher than Phil in risk, okay? So my home is 15.5 feet. I'm several feet above the BFE. Oh, thank you very much. Yep, I appreciate it, thank you. So.
Can I just ask one quick question?
Yes.
So, just for the heck of it, my house is not elevated that much, but let me just ask, if you have elevation on your house, if you're not sitting on a slab, does that?
It doesn't mean anything. No, it doesn't mean anything. So we'll talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this young lady's house, because I know a little bit about her house. So her home was 600 at one point. Let's just assume her home was at 2,500, okay? And she isn't a second homeowner, but she's a substantially damaged and repetitive loss, so she's gonna be in here. So if her premium was 2,500, every year would go up this much. So in 5 years, it would be 6,100, and if her actuary rate in 5 more years was 14,900, it would go up to 14,900. Would you buy this house if you knew this premium was at 14,000? She was paying 600. Would she have bought this house if she knew her premium was 6,900, which it is right now? Or she doesn't even know when it's gonna stop. That's what we wanna get. Her home was high risk. I'm sure, as an educated person, she wouldn't have bought a high risk home. So that's what we want to kind of get to people so they understand what their risk is at. This is a home. It's $11,494 premium. It is in 2012. This home was worth $128,000 in Brunswick, Georgia. 10% of the house value every year they pay in flood insurance. This home is worthless. Your monthly flood insurance premium is almost double. Your monthly flood insurance premium is double what your mortgage is. Now, in 2012, what's called kick down the road. In 2013, we passed the bill. 2014, it's called HIFA, Homeowners Flood Insurance Affordability Act. And what it did was it stopped the premiums from going from non-subsidized to subsidized. Now they're getting phased in to kind of help people understand. But what's happening is the people that aren't educated, I haven't spoken to this young lady, but what do you think she probably did? Because her premium went down to like 800 or 1,000, but she knows it's going to go up to 11,000. This is her actuary rate. So it went back in 2013. She got the bill for 11,000, and then it got rolled back because of legislation, and her premium is going to go up 18% compounded annually until she gets to 11,000. What do you think she did?
Sold.
So we're playing musical chairs, and the educated are going to get out, and the non-educated are going to get stuck, and they're going to lose their home. So that's one of the things we kind of want to talk about. This home is in the dreaded V zone. The flood insurance premium is $65,738. This home never flooded, by the way. You can see it right here. That's the actual amount. She had paid $4,600 on this house. I know this young lady. It's in Rhode Island, I believe, or Massachusetts. She's right on the border there. And she just paid her house. She just paid it off. She's going naked. So one of the problems is when you don't have flood insurance and you flood, FEMA actually gives you a check. The government gives you a check. It's almost rewarding bad behavior. So then why should you buy flood insurance if you're going to get a check, right? So that's one of the problems. Like, why am I paying flood insurance when my next door neighbor who paid his house off and said, you know what, I'm never going to flood. Like, my development never flooded in 50 years. Yes, sir?
Yeah, but your lending agency requires you to have flood.
Well, if you don't have a mortgage, you don't have a lending agency, right? So that's what a lot of people are going to do, but it puts it puts our government at risk, okay? It puts our government at risk. So the flood insurance program, since Katrina, it's in the whole $25 billion. By the way, Katrina happened, and one of the biggest costs to Katrina is the levee system that we paid $10 billion for failed. In court, the Army Corps of Engineers was taken to court by citizens in New Orleans, and they were responsible. It was supposed to hold, but it failed. But we pick up the tab for the flood insurance program. So we bailed out the Army Corps of Engineers, and you and I are paying it, and that's why one of the reasons our premiums are going up. Same thing with Phil and Bill is when people fill, the young lady, tell me what you told me before, young lady. Loud.
We bought our house in 1978.
Yep.
There was a huge ditch that went like 4 blocks down into the neighborhood. There was woods between our house and Bonnie Road for probably 4 or 5 blocks. There were woods behind us, and they developed them. And the houses behind us, the first street behind us, the developer built houses on the slab, and the driveways went downhill from the road
Into the house.
into the house. The double marble into the driveway and roll to the house. At 3 houses over there. And those houses have flooded, so now they want to make our neighborhood.
If you have, she has a $6,000 a year mortgage, she can buy another house for $100,000, okay? So that's kind of where we're at there. All right, I'm just gonna go through this real quick, but there are ways, obviously you can elevate your home. How do you save money on flood insurance, right? If your house is not built properly, it's actually like lowering your home. So if your ductwork is below the BFE, they're going to count not your plywood floor, they're going to count the ductwork underneath as your elevation. So just removing your ductwork and putting it upstairs will save you thousands sometimes, okay? Your air conditioning unit that's on the ground, sometimes you just put it on stilts, pick it up 3 feet, depending on what your base, and that's like elevating your home a couple of feet, okay? So one of the gentlemen said, I went and got another agent or asked my agent, his home was rated incorrectly, probably, is why his premium was up. Make sure there's no mistakes in your elevation certificate, I'll go over it. You get the higher deductible if you can on your flood insurance, it saves you money. Raise your mechanicals, if you have your heating system, if you have your hot water on the floor in your garage and your kitchen floor is higher, just lift them up, put them on blocks, and then go get another certificate. Flood vents. And we don't have basements down here, right? Nobody's got a basement, right? We have a high water table, okay? If you're not in a flood zone, changes are coming, especially out here. Even if your land is high, you can get a preferred risk policy for like $300. You lock it in. So if you get mapped into another flood zone, you're mapped in for like years at this crazy low rate. So it's a great investment. If you have any questions on how to calculate your lowest floor guide and what you can do, it's called, just Google FEMA lowest floor guide. You can file a letter of map amendment to see if you're in a flood zone, and sometimes you can get out. And obviously you can elevate your home, okay? And your town, I think you have a 20% CRS discount in town? Okay, so let's talk about the discount. Your town does certain things. Like right now, if you build a new home, you have to go to BFE +1. Some towns go to BFE +3. You get a higher CRS community rating discount. So if her premium is $6,800 to her, it's actually 20% higher because Charleston gets a 20%. So it's really like $7,800 or something like that. But she got a 20% discount. But when you do positive things, you get higher discounts. There's some towns in Jersey that have 35% discount off what's stated. But if you start doing negative things, if you start fill and build, if you don't do floodplain management correctly. In Louisiana, they built a divider. They built a divider on a highway, and it literally stopped the water on one side of the street instead of those things will make your premiums go higher because it's not letting water move the way it's supposed to move. So specifically, the fill and build is a negative thing. This young lady from 1978, nobody's ever flooded. Now people are flooding. Well, sea level rise hasn't risen that much. If it has risen at all, she's inland. She's getting it from a rain event, not from a water surge event. So that overbuilding is going to get factored in. So when FEMA comes back and redoes your maps again, two things are going to happen. Your elevation is going to rise, like Rich's elevation. It was 12, now it's 14. We have people in our group, so we have 50,000 people, probably more now, from across the country. There's a young lady from Massachusetts. Instead of doing what Rich did, she just elevated her home. 3 times she's elevated her home. It's at least $150,000 to elevate your home because they keep changing the BFE. If anybody raises their home, raise it as high as you can. Do it like this gentleman here did. All right, so these are all the places that your elevation certificate can be wrong. All these yellow stickers, if they're wrong, you're probably going to get rated wrong. So you got to get somebody that speaks flood, that's really good with flood, and they can kind of help you sometimes with your, all right, if you want to know what you're going to be paying, what your actuarial rate is, feel free to go to www.truefloodrate.com. You upload your elevation certificate and they'll spit out a number for you, okay? It's pretty easy if you have a hard time getting all the information, what it is. Anybody buying a home, anyone buying a home should know what their true flood rate is, their risk, right, of their property. Okay, this is risk rating, and I'll just go over it. This is what's going to come in 2020. the closer you are to a flooding source, the higher your premium is going to be. So Rich is in a V zone. If I'm a block in and I'm in an A zone, my flood insurance is significant. My risk in my flooding zone today is significantly less. But with risk rating 2.0, I'm almost going to be paying what he's going to be paying because I'm right next to the V zone. And the guy 5 or 8 blocks in from me is going to be paying significantly less because he's further from the V zone, the flooding source, okay, or the river, or whatever that is. We just don't know how high that's going to go, okay? The cost to rebuild your home. And now, see, there's different type of flood risk. So right now, FEMA really talks about inland flooding and river flooding. They don't talk about overbuilding a lot. And so we don't know for sure, but I'm pretty positive that, so Houston is one of the most chronically flooded communities in the country, and it's 20 miles from the ocean. Because it's overbuilt and it's just flat and there's no way the water go. So people are going to have to pay with their flood premiums. But risk rating 2.0 will fundamentally, this is my home, I put it on here. I wasn't the lowest home in my community. We lived here my wife lived here 50 years. Nobody's ever flooded. Here's all the contact info. Feel free to take a picture. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. Everybody, if you're on Facebook, get the information. If you go to stopfemanow.com, stopfemanow.com right here, you can sign up for newsletter, email updates, and all this other stuff. We ask you to call your congressman and call your senator and say, hey, this isn't a Republican or Democratic issue at all. Flood zones do not discriminate. We ask everybody. I can't get my congressman, I can't get a congressman or senator to vote for us, but we can get you guys to call and say, hey, we got to vote for this legislation to keep flood insurance affordable. So that's kind of it. Now, I wanted to show you 2 videos, and then we'll kind of...
Let me ask something for you.
Yes, sir.
I understand they took the beaches out of the flood zones, is that right?
The beaches?
Because they don't pay for wave action. My sister-in-law lives out there.
So, all right, so I can't speak specific, all right, so let me just explain. A velocity wave, a V zone is for velocity wave. A velocity wave is, you need 9 miles of deep open ocean to get what's called a velocity wave. If I take my bow and I gun it, I can get a 3-foot wave, but it's not going to knock your house over. You need 9 miles of deep open ocean to get a velocity wave to knock your house off the foundation. That's what a velocity wave is, and that's pretty much the velocity zone, okay? I don't know if they put dunes in front of your area. I don't know, because like in New Jersey, they spent $1 billion and change on dune systems, and a lot of the homes right on the ocean, they're behind a dune, a 25-foot dune. Most of our flooding is back bay flooding. I live on the back bay. That's how we flooded. There's only like 2 or 3 spots where the ocean breached. We had 35-foot waves. It breached the dunes that weren't as fortified as they are today, and that's how we got flooded. And then everybody in the backside got flooded. The oceanfront home, most of the oceanfront homes held up, most. But if they got slammed, they were gone.
Well, Dune Hugo.
So I don't know, but this particular issue where you do.
Well, I live on James Island Creek.
Okay.
And I had 12 inches of water in my garage that came from the rising sea.
Yep.
Which went away immediately when the tide went down. I lost a lawnmower and a freezer.
Yep.
FEMA said they do not pay for wind-driven water, and that my insurance had to pay for it. They paid me absolutely nothing.
Right.
And I had flood insurance.
Right. So, all right. So there's a lot of, I don't know if I want to get into a flood insurance payment issue. So FEMA, I was on the Sandy Task Force in Congress testifying about people getting paid on flood insurance premiums. I don't know if you know, but if your house has foundation, if the water settles under your home, or it's called earth movement, it is actually an exclusion on your flood policy. Think about it. The biggest thing, if you total your car, we're not going to pay your car insurance. We're not going to pay you on a claim. I mean, it doesn't make sense. The biggest damage you can get on your house, if you get a foot of water, you can cut some sheetrock, some outlets, and you're pretty good. But if your foundation settles or cracks because it liquefies because of the flood, they're excluding it. It was written in the flood policy. So there's a lot of stuff like that, and there's particulars with garages, attached and detached and everything. Here's what I will tell you. Everyone, when you have a flood claim, very simple. Squeeze the lemon, get as much as you can, and then hire an attorney. Don't even get an adjuster. Squeeze the lemon, and then get as much as you can, and then when you get an attorney, you only pay them for what they get above and beyond what you got.
Well,
So,
I think it hurts you to file a claim.
I'm sorry?
I think it hurts you to file a claim.
No,
Then
no.
you become a statistic.
Not really. I mean, it might be a statistic if somebody buys your house and they query it, but, you know, you should be disclosing that stuff anyway. You know what I mean? Here, let me just show you two quick videos, and then we'll kind of go from here about flood insurance. So this is Senator Menendez, Elevate or build seawalls or all that good stuff. So there is some good stuff. Here's the one thing. We have to understand our risk. If you understand your risk, you're probably not going to buy that house. You shouldn't get stuck with the house. If somebody's watching you and going, hey, I want to buy a house, how do I figure out risk? This is what you should kind of watch and kind of understand it. One of the things that we've advocated for is on your next flood insurance bill, we want to have your actuarial rate there. So when somebody goes to buy it, I'm a realtor and a broker, a week before, when you get that flood insurance premium, it's going to say, oh, you're paying $2,800 a year, but your actuarial rate is $14,000 a year. Well, now you can make an educated decision, because it's still, you know, if you're getting it $200,000 cheaper, it might be worth it. You know what I mean? But as long as you're educated about it, and that's what the risk is, we want people to stop buying risk and stop building in risk. Like this young lady said, they're building houses with the slant, with the driveway going backwards, they're flooding, and it's just not the right way. This fill and build stuff, which in the low country is just asinine. I mean, I know they have the Dutch dialogues here, but I don't have a PhD in floodology, but fill and build is actually going to take water. Think about it. There's 10,000 dump loads in this development they're putting here. Think about 10,000 swimming pools. When it rains, where's that water going to go? It's not going there anymore. It's going to get dispersed everywhere else. But it doesn't just do that. In some places, it builds a dam so the water can't go out. So it's going to sit there, and it's going to sit there for days. God forbid you have another event a day later. Well, that water hasn't gone out, because now the water goes out. It might not go out. It might protect you. You know, you might get a storm from the ocean side, and it might protect you. But if you get a rain event, it might be double worse. So these are the problems that nobody's taking into consideration. You have to question everything. These towns, a lot of these towns, and I love government. By the way, I'm a realtor and a broker. I've been buying houses, I've developed properties, I've done all that stuff. You can do it in a way where you can do it intelligently, where you're not going to hurt your neighbor, right? But you have to question when they go, oh, we had a flood expert come in and say, oh, it's not going to have an impact. We can all look at the numbers. I can have some physical fitness experts say I'm in perfect shape. I can find somebody or pay somebody to say that. So that we have to really understand that, because it's going to affect people that have never flooded and they're starting to flood again. So that's really my presentation. I open it up. Any questions you have, feel free to ask me any questions.
Well, I mean, just back to the question I was asking earlier, I mean, I know there's some maybe supposed to open it up, but how are people going to protect themselves? Like, you know, usually somebody goes to a real estate agent, and they hire a real estate agent, and you know, possibly a lawyer to help them through the process. If they don't say anything about it and tell you everything's okay, you know, you're in a certain flood zone, and you're not going to flood, and nobody says anything.
So, all right. So number one, as of today, it's not the realtor's responsibility. In my opinion, realtors are the experts in their community. You might not know as much as I do. You might not have, but you should at least say, hey, watch this video, or hey, flood insurance, or hey, you know, something. Now, your flood insurance agent should know. Now, everybody, here's what I'm going to urge. Everybody who has flood insurance, I virtually guarantee, think about the IRS, okay? If you took your taxes and you went to 3 accountants, you're going to get 3 different results. Flood insurance is actually more complicated than the IRS, if you can believe it. And it's weather related, so it's crazier, right? No, we can't tell if it's going to rain tomorrow. So I strongly suggest everybody call another flood insurance agent. I'm going to give you some motivation. If you're paying $1,000 a year right now and you have national flood insurance, $300 is a commission for the flood insurance agent. If they lower your flood insurance and they go private, they only get 10%. So if they lower it to $800, they only get $80. their money goes down almost 400%. So these are big things. She's paying $6,000 a year. Somebody's making an $1,800 profit for the same thing that they're making a $300 commission on. So it almost says, if I cut her down to $1,000, it's not worth it for me. I'll let her get stuck for a few years. Everybody, if you're paying $300 or $6,000, go get rated with them. The worst they can say is no. And if they can, then you go to them, right? It's pretty simple. If you need an expert, if you want somebody who does flood, if you want an insurance agent, I can refer you to an insurance agent that knows flood here. If you want a realtor, I can refer you a realtor that knows flood, that'll tell you the truth. Let me take that back. That will tell you what they know. They're going to give you the true risk. Like, they're part of our group. We have realtors are the biggest part of our group, the concerned ones, right? And then if you want an insurance agent, you can be in Texas or California and write flood in South Carolina. You don't have to be from Charleston to write your flood policy. But you want to get somebody who speaks flood, okay? Right, in terms of insurance agent. Yes?
Okay, I'm just wondering what this was. We bought our house 21 years ago, and we're in AB, and we had to get flood insurance. So we did. So we've had flood insurance this whole time. Well, it was with State Farm, with where our cars were and everything. I want to say 10 years ago, or I'm not even sure, midway through, something happened and they said, your flood insurance is just with FEMA now, right? But it's like State Farm sort of still has it too.
Yeah, so
everything's from FEMA, and it just makes me nervous. Our rates have like one hike over a 20, something maybe happened here or whatever.
So 90% of flood insurance, 95, 98% of flood insurance is backed by the National Flood Insurance Program. So you might buy it from Allstate or State Farm. They buy it, they get 30%, and then the rest of the money, let's say it's a $1,000 premium, they get their $300. The $700 goes to NFIP. When there's a flood, State Farm, they call up State Farm, they go, hey, we're going to pay you more money, go take care of their claim, but NFIP is going to pay your claim. It's a pretty good business. Imagine having an insurance company and there's no risk, and you make 3 times the amount of a private insurer. It's pretty good. It's a pretty good business, and you have no risk. You don't pay that claim. Think about it. If I had a private insurer if I had a private insurance company in just New Jersey and Sandy came, I'd go belly up because I have to pay all those claims. But with the NFIP, you don't pay any claims.
So if something happens to us, do we call FEMA?
You call your insurance agent because they oversee the claims process, but the money is coming directly from FEMA. It's not coming from State Farm.
Oh.
They're just an agent. So when your State Farm agent writes it, it's Big George's State Farm or Big George's Insurance down in St. James Island is the same thing. And I just contract with State Farm for your homeowners. I get a commission, but State Farm's going to pay it. Well, State Farm goes right to the NFIP, and they're really backing it. They're paying. It's really their insurance. They're just writing it up and doing it all that. But a lot of them don't know how to write it up. A lot of them, if they don't know the intricacies, will kind of go from there. Also, just a second, with private flood. So a lot of people aren't going to private flood, and as the law stands today, if you go to private, you might save money, okay? And I'm not saying don't. One second, I'm not saying don't or do go, but if you're paying $6,000, you can get it to $2,000. It might be worth it for you. But if you're paying $1,000 and it's going to $800, I would say don't do that, because if you get thrown out of the private pool and you go back to the NFI pool, you go to the actuarial rate. You can't buy in at the subsidized rate wherever you would be on that chain. You have to go in. So that's what happened with these people is, for whatever reason, they jumped up to the actual rate. That's why they saw those crazy bills. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the NFIP program? Because I know that they, at the 30th of September, they were either going to renew it as is, they had the water bill, and then they had the one that was better. Can you tell us a little bit about where that is?
I love it. I love it. Somebody speaks flood. So in 2017, we brought about 60 people. This is actually there to DC to talk about all the issues. So this was supposed to, FEMA, the NFIP gets reauthorized about every 4 years, and it was in 2017 it was supposed to get reauthorized. From 2017 to today, they've been doing these 2-3 months extensions. But in reality, it's like getting the 25% bill, because that's what's in effect today. So in reality, we have a bill for 2 years. we have a bill, it's the crazier one that we don't want. So they just keep kicking down the road, but that's what we're getting. So at some point, that bill's gotta get voted on, and hopefully we get the one that's the 9% increase, but that's kind of where we are. The one with 9% increase just has a bunch of good stuff, like, if you don't get paid on your flood claim, we have more action, more protection, and all this other stuff with fraudulent contract, or fraudulent engineers and all that stuff. So you get paid a little bit better, quicker, and all that stuff. So yeah, but I'm glad you speak flood.
Can I ask just one follow-up question on that?
And by the way, the NFIP program brings in like $3 or $4 billion a year right now. About 100 people work for the NFIP. It's all subbed out. It's all subbed out.
And do you have any numbers, because I actually did bring this up with a number of U.S. representatives, and they indicated to me that they were concerned that we would be, the lower cap, the 9% cap would actually be subsidizing too much people in their homes. And but if you go from, 2,500 to 25,000 and you're required to have that ultra mortgage, then theoretically you're going to be displacing many residents along coastal communities and rivers. And do you have any data on that we could share with those folks that are?
What particular data are you looking for?
The data would be the projections as to how many people would lose their homes due to flood insurance rates if they.
Okay, that's a great question. That's a really good question. Nobody's going to give you the answer. And look, I started the group. It's named Stop FEMA Now. And originally it was like, I don't want my flood insurance to go to 30,000. I don't want to raise my home. You should have told me before. I just wanted information. 7 years later, though, I really don't want to stop FEMA. I want people to understand what your risk is, right? So, talking to the policy advisors, the people who write flood, both sides, people who want to hire lower. We talk to everybody, and primarily the people at risk are the older homes, the pre-firm homes, because they're built lower. Think about it. If you're a builder and it's cheaper to build on the ground as opposed to higher, you're going to build lower, so you can make more profit. So the older homes, the pre-firm homes, the older they get, the lower they are, the closer they are to the river, the closer they are to the ocean, and then they come out. But the issue is, and here's where the issue is, now we're not near the beach. How far are you from the beach right now? 6 miles. We're talking about flooding 6 miles inland. It's because of overbuilding now. Okay, so that's your next wave. That's what risk rating really 2.0, and my understanding is going to be more about. We're always talking about flooding from the ocean or the rivers. Well, it's coming from the community within itself because it can't displace the water that naturally.
James Island has storm surge in bad storms, and so it's from the.
Oh yeah,
the
so
water.
It might be a mixture.
The beach is way down here, but it's not all land. I mean, but there's creeks and rivers that are
right.
very close, and so we are.
I'm not saying this community, but I always go back to Houston because I know people that have never flooded that are in our group. We've never flooded in 20 years. Now we flood when it's 2 inches of rain, and it's because of the overbuilding. The bayous can't take the water and all this other stuff. Yes, sir.
Good segue there. Talk a little bit about the effects of these raised developments on the neighboring properties when the new standards are set.
Okay, so FEMA's now coming. The older maps were done by hand. Some of the maps were done by hand. Some of them were done. When were the last maps? Does anybody know?
We have new ones that are supposed to be coming out soon.
All right. So the newer the map, the more information it's going to take about the land topography. Before they were looking at close to the river and close to the ocean and that kind of topography. Now they're going to look at highs and lows within communities. Houston is ground zero of this whole thing, and communities like this are other communities. So when you displace all this water, see, I thought it was a good idea. I'm not a floodologist, but when they take all this dirt out, they leave a pond. Well, if they pump that pond down, and it's, it could take that much water, maybe it's a little bit helpful in the community. So when there's a storm, it'll at least drain something, right? But and they don't, they just fill them back up. But when you take 10,000 dump trucks and put a big pile of water, put it here, well, where's that water going to go? Now that's a different flood mapping model that we have to deal with. That isn't ocean, or maybe a little ocean, maybe a little rain, but what do we do? How do we displace the water? I'll tell you right now, in Toms River, New Jersey, if you bring a drum truck and you put it on your land, everybody's calling the town. It's a big thing. It's a big thing, because where's that water gonna go? We're on postage stamps, everybody's on a, we're 60 by 100 lots, and you go up higher, and it's a big problem. You can't, fill and build would not, this place would be, it'd be like Frankenstein with torches.
Well, what's it gonna do to premiums of those?
Oh yeah, so what's gonna happen is, just like your house, okay? Your house was at 12 for whatever reason, it's up to 14 now, right? Well, if this water can't be displaced, it's gonna go up to 16, right? Now you're gonna be lower than these older homes that were 2 feet are gonna be 4 feet or 6 feet below the BFE. Well, your actual rate is just gonna go higher. So those are the things that, I'm sorry to get to your answer, but those are the things. Your premiums are gonna go higher because they're higher risk. We know that. This young lady who's not a floodologist is telling you they're building homes and they're flooding within whatever. So who's got to pick that up? We're going to pick it up. And those homes are going to be indicative of where we are. Now, if that home was put on 4 or 5 feet higher, then that would be smart building and let the water flow underneath. What I did is I built it and I put it up higher, and there's a lot of land and a lot of permeable land on me. I didn't pave everything, I didn't tile it or whatever. We have, I think, 60% or 70%, I think 70% lot coverage max that you can do. I'm way under that. And that's what, we're kind of sensitive to that these days. Yes.
This whole fill and build thing is more complicated, because the city or the town that has the jurisdiction, the council, allows the developers to build it. Typically, it's a local that closes the first deal, then they flip the development to a major builder whose headquarters might even be in Japan.
Yeah.
So basically what they're doing is they're coming in and building a flood risk in the community, and then taking the profits and leaving the cost for everybody to deal with.
I think, look, I'm not a lawyer, but I've seen a bunch of lawsuits, and there's one going on in Louisiana where the DOT is getting sued, and they're on the highway. It's literally the Jersey barrier, that concrete barrier, is up to the top with water. On the other side, it is dry. I can't believe you can't make this story up. They have shots in Baton Rouge, Louisiana in 2016 flood, and there's a lawsuit. The people that are flooded are saying the DOT built a flood barrier, they're gonna pay for it. Because if you had taken that water and just spread it out over, double the area, we wouldn't have flooded. I mean, and so that lawsuit is there, but I think this is the same lawsuit that will probably happen.
But they say that there's the common enemy rule, that water is a common enemy, therefore you're not necessarily responsible for it. There's some aspect of that.
I'm not a lawyer, but I will tell you, I'll tell you what, in Holland, they're not filling and building. You know what I mean? In Jersey, they're not filling and building, and we don't live in a low country. I was driving over here, I'm in Mount Pleasant, I'm driving over, and when I go over the bridge, I don't know what bridge it is, there's a huge on the right side, it's just dirt. It must be a floodplain. With an inch of rain, the whole thing just it's a swimming pool now, and it was dry.
That's a threat.
Okay, but what I'm getting at though is, that's a lot of water for an inch. I mean, that's a lot, that's a lot of water going up for an inch or two, yeah.
Well, so, local government does not, our town council does not hear every development project and approve it up or down.
Right.
And that's not the way it works. And we do have regulations, and when the developer comes, and if they follow the regulations, they can.
Well,
that's the way it works.
See,
now, we can change the regulations to prohibit bringing in a lot of fill, and the town is looking at that right now. As far as I know, we haven't had too many fill and build projects in the town.
right. Well, like in Jersey, I know what they're doing. Anywhere in my community, there's no fill and build. You got to put it on pilings. Everybody puts it on pilings. So we have all that room underneath. And if your garage floods, who cares? You see what I'm saying? And you're not flooding your neighbor. So that's really what goes on. Everything is on pilings. And to be honest, on us, I think just a normal 1,500 square foot foundation on pilings is less than $20,000. I don't know how much it costs to fill and build, but maybe you can make a deal with them that it's almost like, I won't call them carbon tax credits, but if you're going to do something good for the community and the property's flood negative instead of flood positive, right? We're displacing a lot of water when we fill and build. But if we do it the opposite way, maybe we can give them some kind of credit. And I don't know how you do it, but, you know, you can't stop development, right? I mean, people own land and, you know, all this other good stuff, but, you know, maybe we can work together instead of always trying to fight. And you can get to a win-win, but people need to talk, and, you know, I'm not from here, so I don't want to start, but I've developed properties, and I remember I had to put a big concrete swimming pool over a parking lot. And it was a lot of money, and I didn't understand flood. It was 15 years ago, and I didn't understand flood, but now I understand why it was there, because all the water that came off had to get put into a basin. So and it was in a densely populated area right across from New York City. So, any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I just have one more question. So I'm kind of curious. So there are certainly residential regulations, but then we also see that a lot of our commercial areas are fill and build, or maybe, and that, I mean, how does New Jersey deal with that, the differences between residential up on stilts or piers versus commercial?
I don't know. I don't want to, like, you know, when it comes to commercial, I don't really know that much about it. But with residential, you know, so here's the other thing, is the more, let me just get back to the fill and build, the more they take out, the higher they go. So on that one that was telling you the different prices, so the lower your home is compared to FEMA's BFE, you have a $25,000 premium, or the higher you go, the lower it goes. My flood insurance, I fish out of my backyard, my flood insurance is $300 a year because I'm so high. So you can theoretically put enough land there where that commercial properties pay a lot of flood insurance. Okay, so when you take a commercial property and you have to build it at grade, wherever the grade is, their flood insurance premium might be $300,000, $500,000, $1 million a year. I know people that are properties that are paying $1.2 million a year in flood insurance because of risk. Now, think about it. If I can just take a lot of dirt and I don't have to pay $1.2 million a year every year, I don't even have to pay flood insurance because my land is so high, right? You don't have to pay flood insurance, right? You said. Right, there's some people, even on James Island, that don't have to pay flood insurance because they're naturally high. Well, if I can unnaturally make myself high, I'm saving whatever that number is. It's a lot. Think about it. If some homes are paying one home is paying $64,000 a year higher, well, let's just say a commercial property, they pay significantly higher, per 100,000. So they're going to save that money. So that should get calculated in when they do those things. But I think the mayor said it correctly, is we have to change the regulations a little bit. And you can't, I'm telling you, if you're going to try and fight the Builders Association, you got to work with them. I've seen it nationally and I've seen it locally in a bunch of communities. You try and work together and try and figure out, what can we do to help you, make it better. You know what I mean? Make it better, right? Maybe put them up on ponds and have all that parking. How about that? Put it all on parking, so now they have all that extra parking space and stuff like that. I don't know. Any other questions? Well, I want to thank you all very much for coming, but I want to thank Mayor Woolsey. If you can come up for a second, Mayor Woolsey, Councilman Blank, and Councilman Milliken. And I always say, come on up here. I would hear, come on. Come on this way. Yeah, just come on this way. Yeah, I always say, do me a favor. I don't care if you're a Democrat, I don't care if you're Republican, flood zones do not discriminate. Can everybody please, for them coming, and I'm sure, have you guys learned something today? A little bit?
I think you should have the city council.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were here. Come here. No, you have to come up. You have to come up. We're not going to let you. All right. What's your name?
Carol Jackson.
Carol Jackson. I like to, and it doesn't matter. We don't have to agree on everything. Look, you don't have to agree on everything, but getting educated on these issues is very, very important because it'll help for the future. And I want to thank everybody. Can we please give everybody a round of applause, please? I want to thank you guys. And please, just help everybody be a little bit more resilient. And that's it. Right? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you. Give me a hand again, all right, please? Thank you very much.